great to have you on the show. Great to have you on Seeking Alpha talking to us. So thank you so much for taking the time and joining us.
Thank you for inviting me, Irina.
Well, it's a pleasure. I'm always excited to talk to Israeli companies that have built themselves up and kind of are making their move out into the greater world, which is exactly what I Am Cannabis is doing. You know, the first medical cannabis company to list on the Nasdaq. But before we get to that excitement and why you're here, I'd love for you to share with listeners how you got to the cannabis industry, how you started at I Am Cannabis. What's your journey been to become CEO of I Am Cannabis?
Okay. So I'm one of the pioneers actually in medical cannabis. I started in 2010. My background is software and technology, like many people in Israel. And I started with my own software companies about 20 years ago, together with a partner. And in 2010, someone approached us and said that he has a license to grow medical cannabis in Israel and he needed investment. And I was focused mainly on healthcare technology back then. I've been one of the pioneers to do healthcare technology. And I thought that it makes sense for me with my connections in the healthcare to go into this area and to make something like a medicine out of that. I was a bit naive. It was early days. I didn't understand the meaning of that back then. And this is how I got to the medical cannabis. Actually, in the beginning, when the opportunity came, I didn't know if I should go into it or not. So instead of doing a regular due diligence, what I've done, I said that I will be the delivery guy for one day. I brought it to patients. I said, I'm the delivery guy, nice to meet you. And I started to speak with them.
That's
and
awesome.
This is how I got the feedbacks from the patients about the benefit of medical cannabis. And I remember one case specifically that I went into a house of two elderly people, and one of them, the husband, said that his wife has Parkinson, and she lost a lot of weight, and he started to tell me that when she's taking cannabis, she's not shaking, she started to gain weight, and he cried like a child, okay? How it changed their life. At that moment, I took a decision to go into this business.
That's amazing. First of all, I love it because one, I feel like a sign of a great CEO, any great leader of a company, is somebody that doesn't just know how to lead or how to delegate responsibility, but really what the business is. What does it mean? What does it mean to like give cannabis to patients, not just from a profit, perspective or how much money we can make or where should we be going, but really, what is it? Is it medicine? Am I giving medicine to people? Is that what we're creating? So first of all, just from a CEO perspective, I applaud that. I love to hear CEOs getting involved and the fact that that's how you made your decision. I love it even more. And also within cannabis companies, I find that many times people get into it because they've seen a personal example of how much cannabis can help people. So I think it's really true and a really, kind of important thing to have going into a cannabis company is to kind of understand that. Was that something that you understood just then? Like, was that something that you had in your background as an understanding of what cannabis can do and the potential there?
No, actually, that was the first time, because until then, cannabis wasn't a medicine. Even then, it wasn't a medicine in 2010. It's very easy to forget, but it was like drugs. In the beginning, I remember, after I went into this business and I've done this investment, because I have other businesses, I met with one of the banks. And proudly, I said about the new investment and I'm going into this business. At that moment, the meeting was done, okay?
Yeah.
You could see it in their eyes, and that's it. And because of that, for many years, I kept it below the radar. I wasn't active in the business. I invested in the business. I didn't make any money out of that for many years. I just poured money into it. And what was important for me is to keep the brand, to give good service, and to help patients. And no one back then, I didn't know that this is what will happen. I love to give myself credit, but
So what did you think would happen? How did you envision it going?
In the beginning, obviously, I thought that everything will move faster, that people will understand that there is a miracle here in this plan, with this plant. But after I've seen that nothing is moving and it's not changing, for many years, it was aside. And I didn't know how long it will take and what will happen. And luckily, I had other businesses, so I didn't have to rely on this business as a source of income. It was mainly a source of expense.
So you were constantly reinvesting your own money into it.
Yeah. I invested for many years. I'm the biggest shareholder. I'm heavily invested in the company. The people around me heavily invested in the company. My employees invested in the company. We are a group of believers.
That's awesome. So what was the first point where you were like, okay, maybe this is actually going to do something and maybe I'm going to see some kind of a return on my money?
So actually, only 3 years ago, I decided to focus on cannabis. I have other businesses, like I said, I'm an entrepreneur. I left the other businesses. I'm still a shareholder, but I'm not active in my other businesses. In the last 3 years, I'm doing only cannabis, and I love it. I love the industry. It's ever-changing industry. It's dynamic. It's exactly what entrepreneur needs.
Yeah, exactly. It really is. It's built for entrepreneurs. So
Yeah.
what was it that made you decide to go full time and leave kind of the day-to-day operations of your other businesses?
I understood that something has changed. The world is changing, and it becoming something that is very much straightforward, Main Street, and not something that people that are doing cannabis. It's like illegal, gray area. And that's one of the reasons that we went to, first of all, very straight to the medical. Israel, Germany, the places with the high regulation, very straightforward, no bullshit, no gray area. So that's one of the reasons that I went into this direction, because I felt that it's more secure for me, with my background at least.
And do you feel like the fact that you're focusing on medical cannabis in these, as you mentioned, Europe and Israel and Canada, they all have, very clear, well, Israel maybe not always clear, but certainly they have strong regulations that have to be adhered to and complied with. Do you feel like the way to build a medical cannabis company that's crossing those borders, those international borders, do you feel like the number one thing that you need to be to kind of make it over the long term is to start out being compliant with all the regulations? Do you feel like that's one of the most essential things to do when you're starting out?
So regulation is what is managing this industry today. Mm-hmm. Because the demand is out there, and the demand was always there. What the only reason why people didn't use it, out there, was because of the regulation, because it wasn't legal. So you have to comply with the regulations. You have to be expert with the regulation, because this is what is run the business. This is what can kill you as well. okay? Because we've seen, for example, with CanTrust in the past, okay? You know, minor glitch, and that's it, the company gone. So you have to be very accurate about that. No compromise, I would say. But today, IMC is not only in medical. We've done the acquisition of JWC last year, and they are completely recreational. So I think that we will see that the borders will be there will be a fusion between the borders of medical and recreational in many places, I believe. And you know, you mentioned the Israeli market. The Israeli market is a unique market. I'm not familiar with any market like the Israeli market. And we know that many of the patients, quote unquote, in Israel are, you know, more recreational users that got a prescription, and that's the way to get cannabis for them.
It's interesting that you say that, because the medical regulations in Israel are kind of known for being very tough in a way that, you know, Americans in medically legal markets, I think, have an easier time getting a medical card than they do in Israel, which people are hopeful that opens up. But it's interesting to hear you say that, that you feel like it's a way to get into the adult use market. Is that based on data? What are you basing that on?
So first of all, I don't know who of the listeners knows, but Israel is very unique because the black market is more expensive in Israel than the medical market.
Right.
Okay,
right.
I think that's the only place in the world that I'm familiar that the black market is not only expensive, way more expensive than the medical market. And we can see medical products that are coming from pharmacies that are going to the black market and get a premium in the black market. So because of that, actually everybody have an incentive to get a prescription and to get medical cannabis legally. Not only that it's legally, but it's also cheaper than the black market. So I think that this uniqueness of the Israeli market is very significant. And what we can see today is even companies that publish in the newspapers, in the radio, that they will get you a prescription for medical cannabis. So this is something new that we are seeing in the market. And it's because it's difficult to get prescription for medical cannabis in Israel. So medical cannabis in Israel is like the last frontier. If you suffer from pain, you have to prove that you used other painkillers and they didn't help you, and only then you can get prescription for medical cannabis. But today, there are ways to bypass that. For example, there are doctors, they're giving you a prescription for any other painkillers, and they're saying to you, come within a month, say that it didn't help you, and we'll get you a prescription for medical cannabis. I'm not saying that that's the way that people should react, but many people are starting to go in this direction. So I think that according to the data in Israel, 27% of the population use cannabis illegally. The meaning of that is that even the medical market can be a huge market, and because of the more recreational side of this market.
It's so like crazy, all these laws to do with cannabis. I mean, the one you just mentioned is a great example how absurd it is that you need to, even if you're not gaming the system, even if you're taking it realistically, like trying to get onto opioids or SSRIs or whatever you're getting on to prove that you need cannabis is so beyond crazy to me. It's hard to even understand. And then also from what you're saying is there's just so much more money to be made, both by companies and by the government, once it's like fully regulated and once they legalize adult use. What is, aside from the political picture here, which is always an exciting game to play, and speaking of ever changing, almost, it kind of never changes, but it's always being talked about. how hopeful are you that that rationalizes with these upcoming elections?
So it's a bit early to envision what will happen after the election because we don't
Yeah.
understand how the picture will look like. Israel is, different in that aspect as well because we have the more Orthodox. We have few communities in Israel that look differently on the same aspect. It's a question. Personally, I think that we will have legalization as one day. I don't know how long it will take. Maybe after the election, we will see that it's moving very quickly. But I think that even if we won't see the legalization, what we will see is a huge increase in the medical market. Okay, and we will see that more and more people are getting prescriptions. And I think that it will be like the more people will get prescription, the more doctors will prescribe, and it will grow. It will start and will grow. And I think it will grow significant. The market will grow significantly in the coming years, regardless of the legalization.
And do you think that's because of, now you can get cannabis at pharmacies, and as you mentioned, it's difficult, but it's opening up more and more. Do you feel like that's why it's going to be that way?
Yeah, I think that there is an ecosystem in Israel now. You have many pharmacies that started to sell, and it become a significant source of income for them. You can see that many farms are being built, many GMP facilities. The industry is growing. The industry needs market. So I think that it will feed itself.
Yeah. Okay, so talk to us about the deal that you guys did with Trichome Financial in Canada. And I mean, it seems like a huge deal. Talk to listeners about it.
I love this deal.
Yeah, I bet.
I love this deal because, first of all, we have excellent group of people that joined us, joined our family. And for us, the main reason in the beginning was that we wanted a good supply of indoor products. The Israeli market has become the biggest importer of medical cannabis in 2020. Most of it came from Canada and most of it came from indoor facilities. And what we have seen that Israelis love it. On the other side, what is important for many Israelis, patients, and we've seen it, is continuity of care. They want to know that if they have a strain and it works for them, they want to know that they will be able to buy it in 6 months, 8 months, the same product. Now, that was our way to secure this continuity of care and to be able to commit for the quality. Because in cannabis, quality is the most important, okay? It's the #1 factor. Now, in order to give quality product and to be able to continue to supply, first of all, we wanted indoor facility, and then we wanted to have control over that facility. It made sense to do it in Canada, to buy a ready-made facility from Canada instead of building one in Israel. And with Trichome, what I love about deal is not only that we have the facility and a presence in Canada, but we have excellent team that knows how to do due diligence for companies, to assess companies. They are well familiar with the market. They know how to restructure companies. So we have an M&A vehicle today in Canada, in North America. And this is one of the biggest advantages on top of the aerophonic facility that we acquired. And it's not only for Israel. IMC is an international company, work in premium markets. The Israeli medical market, if you look at the pricing, is premium market. The German market that we're working in is a premium market. in Canada, we are going to the premium segment. So it makes sense to have indoor facility to supply our network of companies.
So you would say that indoor cannabis grown indoors, you feel like is you're better able to kind of tend to it in terms of what's going into it, and then also just the strains that you're developing indoors. It just happens to be that Israelis take to that, or does that have to do with the higher THC strains? What is it that they're liking about it?
So I think that the market is young market. Okay, it's not mature yet, so it's not stabilized yet. And what we've seen, first of all, Israel is a small country, and many of the brands are imported. I'm not speaking about cannabis. I'm speaking in general. So there is a very good acceptance of brands that are coming from the outside to the Israeli market. So I think that this is part of what we've seen in 2020 with the adoption of new strains and products that are coming from Canada mainly. I think that it will continue, and we will see there will be a place for imported products. In Israel, most of the product is coming from greenhouses. We have excellent weather and excellent conditions in Israel. And I believe that we'll see a mixture of both of them, and I think that there is room for both of them. With indoor, you can it's more, you can have steady supply, and it's the same conditions most of the time, so it's much easier to monitor and to have something that's more suitable for medical markets, I would say.
And talk to us about the deal that you made with Trichome, like in terms of bringing together those two teams, in terms of coming together and deciding that that was a partnership that both sides wanted to make. How did you guys both come to the table, and how has it been kind of, because everybody says, right, and it's kind of clearly the most difficult part of doing a partnership is bringing together two different teams and two different companies that are doing slightly different things and then marrying them together. So talk to us about how that journey has been.
Okay, it was a journey, like you said. So actually, I'm familiar with Michael previously, Michael, the CEO of Trichome. And Mark Lustig, which is our chairman, is the chairman of Trichome as well, was the chairman of Trichome as well. So we had some kind of relationship before the deal. And we've been in touch. We negotiated, we tried to do a deal earlier last year. And at some stage, the negotiation broke down. We decided that we're not going to do a deal together. We separated, and we continued with other alternatives. And at some stage, we regrouped together, and then we have done a deal. But we had a crisis in the middle. And what we discovered is that we have a very similar approach and some very similar beliefs. And I think that that's the most important, because at the end of the day, you're doing business with people, not with facilities. And we're working very closely from the beginning. We have been aligned about the strategy, where we're going, what each of us is doing. And we discovered that each of us is bringing different aspects to this marriage. And together we're much better. So I think that this is the essence of this partnership, I would say. I'm not seeing it as we bought them, we have done the acquisition, we are the strong, we are a team. We are one team, and we're working very closely together. And we started with the integration between the teams from the beginning. And we've seen that actually our gut feel that the mentality is very similar is true, okay? Although we are Israelis and are Canadian, and we have Germany, each location, and you probably knows that, have a different mentality. But in the core values and the things that we believe in the things. And we will see more and more acquisitions that we will do. And we will do it as one group, okay? Not the Israeli team or something like that. I don't see differences today.
And why did it break down when you said that it almost broke down? Was that about finances? Was that about timing? What was going on?
Finance.
Always.
Negotiation, we didn't agree about the terms.
And so how did you guys come together in terms of that? What changed?
We've been dating, and we went out, and we have seen what there is out there.
Yeah.
And we said, okay, this marriage is the best for us.
That's an honest answer. I love an honest answer from a CEO, one of my favorite things. So you said that you guys have a shared vision. What's the shared vision? What are you guys trying to bring to the marketplace? And within saying that, I think I will point out, something that's being talked about a lot is obviously the United States, going legal or in the process of having some type of legalization there. And obviously investors are very excited, me included, about what's happening in the States and all the US players. But I think what's happened also with the excitement around the US is people also renewing their excitement about there's multi-state operators in the United States, but there's multi-country operators globally, and you guys are one of those players. Yep. And I think we saw with the Curaleaf deal recently, getting into Europe, I think investors are really understanding that business model. So I guess part of my question is that part of your excitement, or talk to us about your shared strategy, and then also kind of the notion of going global in that way.
So if you're looking today at the market, we see that America is the biggest market, no question about that, but federally illegal, unfortunately, or fortunately, maybe, okay?
Yeah.
And honestly, I think that everybody out of America should be very thankful that it's federally illegal. Now,
why do you say that?
Because to compete with Americans, it's much more difficult.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I love I love America, and I love the American market. For us, it's not a market in the near future because we can't work in if it's federally illegal. Okay, especially now with Nasdaq. And IMC today is active in the 3 biggest legal markets in the world, which is Canada, full recreational, Germany, and Israel, medical. And we believe in the EU market. For us, that was the main market that we targeted because Israel is very similar to Europe in many aspects. First of all, is the regulation. Okay, we spoke about it earlier. Everything is medical. It's like pharma. It's very different than North America. Everything has to be GMP certified. It goes through pharmacies. It's completely different market. And we know excellent how to work in this highly regulated market. Canada, on the other hand, brings the recreational aspect. Now, for us, this exposure is very important. And it's very different than our markets. And I believe that Europe will go recreational as well. And we're starting to hear about that and to see in small places like Luxembourg, but it's only the beginning. So I believe that we will see in Europe both medical and recreational in the coming years. And I think that today we're in excellent, or maybe the best position to take advantage of that. And also to bring the know-how and the experience from the Canadian market into the EU market for the recreational aspect.
So when you talk about picking up more acquisitions, are you talking about Canada, Israel, Europe? It could be in all of those places?
Yeah, definitely. In each of the states that we're working in, we have targets in each of the countries. We have targets for expansion, and we will expand in all of those markets. Not only those markets, because the EU is starting to open up. So we will go to more markets in the EU. In the beginning, we will do it through Germany, because in Germany, we're building now a very big logistics center to be able to supply to all of Europe from Germany. Europe, it's the EU market, it's very similar standards. We have a EU GMP facility in Germany that can take product, we can send bulk to Germany, do the repackaging over there, and send it from Germany to all of Europe. So it's very convenient. We're well established with our operation. Now it's to expand it.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I think a lot of, I think companies that this whole time, right, even before cannabis was really exciting, the companies that were doing it smartly, as you've said, that were kind of a lean operation and being very responsible and growing very in measured steps, I think right now are seeing these companies for sale that they can get for a pretty good price because of how the market's opening up. And I think I would say that the one thing or one of the main things to look at when you're looking at that is how the company can control their supply chain and how much of a handle they have on all of that. Talking about a logistics center in Germany, it sounds like that's what you guys are paying attention to first before expanding out.
Yeah, I believe that first of all, you have to build a foundation, okay? It's like a pyramid, okay? Build a very significant foundations, and then it's very easy to expand. So for us, we have three legs. We have the EU in Germany, and we are expanding and building and investing, and we have very strong operation over there with a very good team. We're doing the same in Canada. We're doing the same in Israel. And then it's very easy to grow and to expand and to do M&As as well as part of this strategy.
So talk to us about the journey, speaking of another journey of getting to Nasdaq, right? That's like, when we're speaking of the excitement in the United States, one of the things that's not exciting about the United States is that most of those players in the States are not on a major exchange. And that's an advantage that you and some other, Canadian players have to be able to be listed on the Nasdaq. Talk to us about the difficulty in getting there and the advantages of being there.
So we just went in, so I don't have a lot of experience to share with you. For us, it was very clear from the beginning that we want to be traded at one of the senior stock exchange, and the CSC was a station. We started in the CSC to do test the water, to be a public company in the cannabis area. And it was very clear that it's a station. So the best station after the CSC was Nasdaq, obviously. And we worked hard to go to Nasdaq. But it was another milestone. I don't think Nasdaq, it's not the target by itself. Nasdaq is a tool at the end of the day. It's a tool to be more exposed to new investors, to be able to use this platform, to do M&As, to raise money. So this is how I treat Nasdaq. It's not the target by itself.
Right. So do you feel like the fact that you're kind of on this path to growing in this sustainable way, what do you see aside from, picking up different acquisitions, what do you see going forward in terms of, let's say, the next 12 to 24 months?
So in the next 12 to 24 months, for us, okay, we will continue with the expansion and M&As. In all the territories. We want to expand to new countries within the EU, because I think that we will see that the market will grow significantly. We are going more to delivery methods. I think that there is a need over there. And as you know, Israel is very good in innovation. In Israel, in any hospital, in any university, you can find research about cannabis. So Israel is an excellent place for the next wave in this industry. And I think that once, for us, we will be more stable in the markets where we're located, that's the time to introduce new products, more innovation into those markets, and especially if you're talking about medical. Because for medical, you need clinical trials, you have to come more with evidence. So I think that there is a lot to do over that. And the EU market in general is very medical oriented today. So I think that we will push also in that direction as well.
You mentioned, and I wanted to ask you this when we were talking about Israel's path to legalization, and you were talking about, there's conservative elements that live in Israel. Do you feel like it's mostly a part of those conservative elements, or do you feel like it's, some people point their finger at the pharma industry in terms of kind of blocking the grow of legal cannabis? What do you think is preventing it from, because you said, Israel's the innovation nation, and it is, and you would think that we would be further along. So why do you think that we're not necessarily?
So I think that Israel is conservative as well. Israel is conservative as well. We have the army service in Israel, which is mandatory at the age of 18, which is, if you're doing legalization, no one can do legalization without thinking about the army. Now, the last thing that you want is to have a pilot, I would say, that smoked a joint and went to the airplane, okay? Or went to the combat. I don't know, okay? Peace flower instead of shooting people. So I think that Israel is a unique place. It's more difficult because I think that it's a concern for many people. On the other hand, everybody's smoking in Israel,
Yeah.
It's something so common. So it will happen. I have no doubt about that.
Yeah, I remember talking to Fabian Henry. He's an activist and he's a former military guy from Canada. And he was telling listeners, and I feel like it was the best explanation I've heard for this problem of, cannabis legalization with soldiers, because I was saying, well, what about alcohol? Like, what's the difference? But they were saying that in alcohol, you can pretty much tell if somebody is drunk or has alcohol on their breath. But with cannabis, you can't necessarily, especially if you're talking about, a different way of getting cannabis than smoking. And that was honestly the best point I've heard about that. But I agree that it's just a matter of time before, people kind of understand that it's not a good enough reason to prevent its legalization. But yeah, I hear that. The other question I wanted to ask you was that Cresco is one of your guys' largest shareholders. I was wondering how that relationship came to be and how that is to kind of have them to talk to.
So Cresco have been a shareholders of Trichome, and after the acquisition, they became our shareholders as well. And today, that's the relationship, I would say. Mark Lustig, our chairman, sold his company, Originals, to Cresco. But today, that's it. Okay, I don't know what will happen in the future, but we are working in a completely different markets today.
Right, gotcha. And in terms of, you were talking about Europe's kind of development as a medically focused, but probably leaning towards, at some point in the future, adult use. Do you feel like it's a matter of Europe kind of understanding all the data and the research that's going on behind the medical cannabis and before going to adult use? It's just a matter of kind of convince, because it's not necessarily such cannabis friendly societies for the most part there. Do you think it's a matter of just adopting the medical first and then understanding what it can bring?
Not necessarily, because I think that today in the medical, there is a gap.
Okay.
And we see it in Germany, because the German doctors want evidence. They want facts. They want to see research. And today, there isn't enough research about that. We are coming with a lot of clinical data because in Israel, we supply directly for patients for many years. So because of that, we've done surveys, we've done studies, we know exactly what strains did they get and what kind of indications they have. So it's very easy to collect clinical data. And we have huge advantage in the German market because we are coming with this kind of data. But it's not enough for them because they want to see it as a pill, okay? After clinical studies, after we've gone through this process. Aside for that, usually in the parliament or in other regulatory
Bodies.
offices, okay, the speaking about recreational, not recreational. So I'm not sure that it's aligned with the medical, and there is any connection between them.
Interesting. It's interesting, which is very unlike the States, which is like in the States,
Yes.
it's very much medical and then adult
In the
use.
States, it's very different, I think. It's very different.
And do you think that has to do with the culture around how they think and use cannabis?
I think that in America, cannabis is much more common and it's something more accepted than in Europe. In Europe, you can see that some countries are more conservative and some are very open. But what I can see clearly is that any place that there is, first of all, medical plan, and then it's moving to other places, companies that have started with the medical have huge advantage in the market.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, we talked about kind of responsible growth and keeping a lean operation and then kind of growing from that. There's been talk amongst the kind of analysts and the investors looking at the cannabis space, how not many companies are, giving guidance, forward-looking guidance in their earnings calls, and how it's kind of starting to open up a little bit with the more mature companies. But it hasn't yet developed. What are your thoughts on when either IMC is going to start reporting that, or in general across the marketplace, like what's it going to take for that to happen?
It's a good question. I think that cannabis, unlike many other industries, is in the infancy of the industry. So it's very difficult to give projection for such a young market moving so rapidly. It's not like Amazon, where it's a big. You have much better visibility, or the market is more mature. It's growing in a regular pace. Okay, and if there are surprises, it's only minor. This industry, most of it is a surprise, and the minority is what you know for sure that will happen.
Right.
So it's very difficult to give projections, and it's more difficult to give right projections. And today the market is not forgiving. If you're giving a projection and you're not meeting that projection, the market is punishing you. So with this market, I think that companies that give guidance is companies that started to do that, and it's very difficult to go out of this route once you started that. We are not giving guidance, not because I don't feel that comfortable with the numbers and where we are going, but because of what I said, because I know that this industry is too young, and I know that I won't be able to be consistent with the guidance that I'm giving.
So does that mostly have to do with the regulatory picture? Like once the regulations are more figured out, you have a sense of how much you're going to need to spend on different things, or the development of the industry?
let's take the Israeli market. Many reasons, but regulation is a big part of that. Let's take the Israeli market, for example. The Israeli market last year was the biggest import market in the world. In 2021, no import until now in Israel. Okay, why? Regulation. Now, a company that imported a lot last year and want to give guidance for this year, and it is relying on import, when they gave the guidance, maybe everything was okay.
Mm-hmm.
Then slightly change of the regulations, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Now go and explain to the market that this is what will happen. It's like to prove that you don't have a system.
That's funny. So Oren, this is a question I want to ask at the end of the interviews. One thing as a CEO that you feel like was the best thing that you did or learned as a CEO, and one of the things that you felt like was your worst decision or something that you really learned from as a CEO. And it doesn't have to be with I Am Cannabis. It can be in one of your many entrepreneurial businesses.
Wow, that's tough.
Yes, tough.
So I think that one of the bad things for me as a CEO is to understand that there are many people that are better than me, okay? And that I should focus on what I'm good at and to let other people do the other stuff, which is most of the things.
That's funny.
So that's the good thing and what I learned, and it's very important lesson, and I think that it's important for every CEO in the world. And the bad thing, wow, I've done so many mistakes.
Well, let me ask you this. You think one of the most important things as a CEO is the team that you build?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Maybe the most important.
Yeah.
Maybe the most important. I can say clearly that if I have to do what my team is doing, I will do it. I won't do it better than any of them.
Right. Right.
Okay. Each of them is better than me in what they're doing, and it sounds like a cliche, but it's not a cliche. That's the reality. And it's super important.
Okay. Any biggest lessons or things that you would have done differently? Kind of words of warning?
So in this industry, what I learned is that sometimes don't be the first one.
Yeah.
You know, being the first one have many advantages, but also disadvantages. If you can be the second, just immediately after the first one, it's better. Okay, it's not something that depends on you. I think that it's very important to be humble in this industry, not only in this industry. And what we've done for many years, we've been very quiet. We build the operation, we build international operation. We didn't raise huge amounts of money. We tried to focus on the execution, not to make too much noise. And I think that maybe it hurt us because many people don't know us, but I think that now I feel much better with that, okay? Because we've done it quietly without building a lot of expectations and just executing. I think that I would like to see it more in the industry, okay, this kind of approach.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's a great point that it's better to grow right than to grow fast or to grow big. And it's better to get there in the right way than to get there first. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think any investor kind of paying attention to specifically the cannabis sector, but really almost any sector, but certainly it has more weight in a growing, burgeoning sector like the cannabis industry. to see people that have gotten there first in a big way with a lot of flashy lights around them, only to be in a really bad spot right now. So yeah, I think we've seen that.
It's interesting what you're saying, because there is a difference between people that know how to raise money and people that know how to build companies. And in the beginning, in this industry, the money went to people that would know how to wave with their hands. We're the biggest, the best, okay? People believed and put money in those people's hands. Now, not necessarily those people are the right executors to execute the strategy.
Absolutely.
Okay? And I think that this is where many investors are disappointed from the industry and from the execution in the industry. But I think that we're seeing a change in the industry, and people understand now that it's a business. It's not about waving hands. It's about execution, like any other business. So
yeah,
the industry is maturing.
No, it's such an excellent point. It's such an excellent point about that change in the industry. And I think we saw with all these management changes that I think, kind of as the industry started to mature and people started to understand, wait, we need somebody different right now, not a salesman. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Very good. Very good. Oren, this has been such a pleasure. I'm really happy to have talked to you and gotten to know more about I Am Cannabis and hear what your thoughts are as a leader. I hope this is the first of many more conversations, and see how you guys continue to grow in the marketplace.
It was a pleasure, Rina. Thank you very much. And hopefully I will come with new stories next time.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. The pleasure was all mine, Oren. So thanks again. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Rina.